The unexpected inheritance the rental car's navigation system had given up 20 minutes ago, leaving Sophia Chen to navigate the winding mountain roads of southern Oregon with nothing but increasingly unreliable cell service and a hand-drawn map from the local gas station. She gripped the steering wheel tighter as another hairpin turn revealed nothing but towering Douglas firs and the occasional glimpse of distant peaks shrouded in morning mist. "This better be worth it," she muttered, glancing at her phone's black screen. Her assistant had been trying to reach her since yesterday about the Morrison account, and every minute she spent in this wilderness felt like money slipping through her fingers. The map showed she should reach Willowbrook Estate within the next mile, though estate seemed like a generous term for whatever awaited her in the middle of nowhere. Great-Aunt Maggie had always been the family oddball, disappearing to Oregon 30 years ago after some unspecified falling out with Sophia's grandmother. The family rarely spoke of her, and Sophia couldn't remember ever receiving so much as a birthday card, which made the lawyer's call 3 weeks ago all the more surprising. Margaret Chen had died, leaving behind a property that needed immediate attention. As her closest living relative, Sophia had assumed she'd inherited whatever modest savings and country cottage her reclusive great-aunt had accumulated. The assumption lasted exactly as long as it took her to reach the ornate iron gates. Marking the entrance to Willowbrook Estate, Sophia pulled over and stared. The gates opened onto a paved drive that curved through manicured gardens toward a sprawling Victorian manor house, its gabled roofs and wraparound porches suggesting the kind of old money her family had never possessed. Behind the main house, she could make out the glittering peaks of what appeared to be several large greenhouse structures. Her phone buzzed back to life, and she quickly called the estate's lawyer. "Mr. Patterson, Sophia Chen. I'm at the property now, and I think there's been some mistake. This place looks like it's worth millions." A pause. "Miss Chen, I'm afraid there's something we need to discuss in person. Are you able to come too?" "My office this afternoon. Can't you tell me over the phone? I've got a flight back to San Francisco tomorrow morning. I really think this conversation is better had face-to-face. There are some complications with the inheritance." Sophia felt her stomach drop. "What kind of complications?" "The estate wasn't left to you, Ms. Chen. It was left to Ms. Elena Vasquez, who's been managing the property's botanical collections. For the past 12 years, your Grattan's will specifically states that you are to be informed of this arrangement, but the property belongs entirely to Ms. Vasquez." The phone slipped in Sophia's suddenly sweaty hand. "That's impossible. I'm her only living relative. I understand this comes as a shock. Ms. Vasquez is expecting you, actually. Your great-aunt left instructions that you should be welcome to stay at the estate for as long as you need to process the situation. There's also a letter for you." Sophia stared at the manor house, her mind reeling. She'd taken time off work, spent money on flights and rental cars, even started mentally calculating how quickly she could flip the property. The Morrison presentation was in 4 days, and she'd planned to spend tomorrow preparing Ms. Chen. "Are you still there?" Here, her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "Did my great-aunt know this Elena person well?" "Very well. Ms. Vasquez lived on the property and worked closely with your Grattant on her botanical research. She's quite knowledgeable about the estate's operations." After hanging up, Sophia sat in the car for several minutes, watching a red-tailed hawk circle lazily overhead. Everything about this felt wrong. Great-Aunt Maggie had been family, strange and distant though she might have been. What kind of person leaves a fortune to their employee instead of their own blood? Finally, she drove through the gates and up the winding drive. The gardens were even more impressive up close, with carefully planned sections showcasing different types of plants and what appeared to be several small ponds connected by meandering streams. Someone had spent serious time and money creating this paradise. She parked near the main house and was reaching for her suitcase when a woman emerged from one of the side paths. Wearing dirt-stained jeans and a faded university sweatshirt, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was probably in her mid-30s, with warm brown eyes and the kind of sun-touched skin that spoke of years working outdoors. "It must be Sophia," the woman said, approaching with a cautious smile. "I'm Elena Vasquez. I was hoping we could talk." Among the orchids, Sophia followed Elena along a stone pathway that wound between beds of late-blooming perennials and ornamental grasses swaying in the afternoon breeze. Despite her anger at the situation, she couldn't help but notice the gardens. Meticulous design, the way colors flowed from one section to another. How different textures created visual rhythm, the careful placement of benches and focal points. Your great-aunt designed most of this herself, Alina said, as if reading her thoughts. She had an incredible eye for spatial relationships, said it came from her years as an architect before she moved here. Sophia stopped walking. Architect. Maggie was a librarian. Alina turned, her expression gentle but puzzled. No, she was a landscape architect. Very successful, actually. She designed public gardens in 3 different countries before she retired here. She paused. How much did your family tell you about her? Obviously not much, Sophia replied, her voice sharper than she intended. She was still processing the implications of the inheritance. And now it seemed like everything she thought she knew about her great-aunt was wrong too. They reached the first greenhouse, and Alina held the door open. The humid air hit Sophia like a warm embrace, carrying the rich sense of earth and growing things. Inside, the space was larger than it had appeared from outside, with raised beds and hanging baskets, creating multiple levels of lush greenery. Automatic misting systems created small rainbows in the filtered sunlight. This is the tropical house, Alina explained, leading her down a central aisle. Your great-aunt specialized in orchids, but she grew everything: bromeliads, rare ferns, medicinal plants from 6 different continents. Sophia found herself slowing down despite her frustration. She'd never paid much attention to plants beyond the occasional succulent for her apartment, but there was something almost magical about this space. Delicate purple orchids cascaded from hanging baskets, while broad-leafed plants created intimate alcoves filled with smaller treasures. How did you end up working for her? Sophia asked, stopping to examine a plant with impossibly blue flowers. I was finishing my botany PhD at Oregon State when I answered her job posting 12 years ago. She needed someone to help catalog her collection and assist with her research. Elena's voice softened. I thought it would be a temporary position, while I figured out my next step, but Maggie, she had a way of making you feel like you belonged somewhere. They continued deeper into the greenhouse, where Alina showed her a climate-controlled section housing what she called the crown jewels. Rare orchids that Maggie had spent decades collecting and propagating. Some of these varieties were thought to be extinct, Alina explained, gently touching the leaves of a small plant with intricate spotted flowers. Maggie worked with conservation groups worldwide to preserve them. This one here. There are maybe 50 specimens left in the wild. Despite herself, Sophia was impressed. This wasn't the hobby collection of an eccentric recluse. It was serious scientific work. So you're a botanist? Officially, yes. But working with Maggie, I became part greenhouse manager, part researcher, part... Alina paused, seeming to search for words. Part companion, I suppose? She was lonely when I first arrived. Her family never visited. The comment stung, though Sophia knew it was true. We didn't know she wanted visitors. She never reached out. She was hurt, Alina said quietly. Something happened with your grandmother years ago. Maggie never told me the details, but I know it involved your family thinking she was wasting her life, throwing away her potential by moving here. They emerged from the tropical house into the late afternoon sunshine. Alina led her toward a smaller structure that turned out to be a research lab, complete with microscopes, growth chambers, and detailed charts tracking various experiments. She published papers until just last year, Alina continued, collaborated with universities, contributed to seed banks, mentored graduate students remotely. This place wasn't a retreat from the world, it was her way of contributing to it. Sophia sank into a chair beside one of the lab benches, feeling overwhelmed. The great-aunt she'd imagined a sad, isolated woman who'd let life pass her by was nothing like the person Alina described. And if Maggie had been doing important work, if she'd built something meaningful here, then maybe leaving it to Alina made sense after all. I don't understand why she left me anything at all, Sophia said. Finally, we barely knew each other. Alina disappeared into an adjoining office and returned with an envelope bearing Sophia's name in careful handwriting. She asked me to give you this. Sophia's hands trembled slightly as she opened the letter. Maggie's handwriting was precise, almost architectural in its clarity. Dear Sophia, if you're reading this, then Alina has shown you what we've built here together. I hope you can see that this place represents more than just plants. It's a living library, a research station, and a sanctuary for species that might otherwise disappear forever. I'm leaving everything to Alina because she understands this work, and will continue it when I'm gone. But I wanted you to see it first, to understand what your family thought I was running away from. I wasn't running, I was running towards something that mattered to me. You have 3 weeks here if you choose to stay. Lena has instructions to accommodate you for as long as you need. I hope you'll use the time to decide what really matters. To you, with love and hope for understanding, Aunt Magia Sophia looked up to find Alina watching her with patient eyes. The setting sun was casting long shadows across the gardens, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear the gentle splash of water features. 3 weeks? Sophia asked. Your room is ready whenever you'd like to see it, Alina replied. Though I understand if you'd prefer to stay in town. Sophia thought about her apartment in San Francisco, her demanding job, the presentation she should be preparing. Then she looked around at the laboratory, at the careful notes documenting years of dedicated work, at Elena's soil-stained hands that had helped tend something beautiful and important. I think, she said slowly, I'd like to stay. Roots run deep. Sophia woke to the sound of birdsong and the gentle hum of greenhouse ventilation systems, so different from the traffic and construction noise that usually greeted her San Francisco mornings. Sunlight streamed through the guest room's tall windows, illuminating antique furniture and botanical prints that she'd been too tired to properly notice the night before. Alina had given her a room on the second floor of the main house, explaining that Maggie had always kept guest accommodations ready despite rarely having visitors. The space felt lived in, but carefully maintained. With fresh flowers on the nightstand and towels that smelled of lavender, after showering and dressing in the most casual clothes, she'd packed dark jeans and a silk blouse that would probably be ruined by greenhouse humidity. Sophia made her way downstairs. The kitchen was larger than her entire apartment. The farmhouse table that could seat 10 in windows overlooking herb gardens, where Alina was already working. Coffee had been left warming on the stove, along with a note, help yourself to anything. In the fridge, I'll be in Greenhouse 3 if you'd like a tour of the rest of the collection. Sophia poured coffee into a ceramic mug decorated with hand-painted orchids and stepped onto the back porch. The morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of roses and something she couldn't identify, something green and growing, alive in a way that made her city lungs feel suddenly inadequate. She found Alina in what turned out to be the propagation house, carefully transplanting tiny seedlings into individual pots. Her movements were precise but gentle, and she hummed softly while she worked. Good morning, Alina said without looking up. How did you sleep? Better than I have? In months, actually. Sophia set her mug on a nearby bench. What are you working on? Native wildflower restoration. Maggie started a project with the State Forestry Department to reintroduce plants that had been crowded out by invasive species. Alina held up a seedling no bigger than Sophia's thumb. This little guy is a native lupin. In 5 years, it could be 3 feet tall and supporting dozens of butterfly species. Sophia watched Alina's careful work, noting the methodical way she labeled each pot, the attention she paid to spacing and soil depth. How did you learn all this? Some from school, but mostly from Maggie. She had this gift for seeing potential in plants, in landscapes, in people. Alina glanced up with a small smile. She used to say that gardening was just organized hope. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Alina teaching Sophia how to handle the delicate seedlings. It was meditative work, requiring focus, but leaving room for conversation. Gradually, Alina began sharing stories about her years with Maggie. When I first arrived, she was this intimidating woman in her 70s who spoke 3 languages and could identify any plant by its Latin name. I was terrified I'd accidentally kill something irreplaceable. Lena laughed softly. The first week, I knocked over a rare bromeliad and started crying. Instead of being angry, Maggie spent the next hour teaching me how to propagate new plants. From the broken pieces. Sounds like her, Sophia said. Though she realized she was basing this on Elena's stories rather than her own memories. The family always said she was brilliant but difficult. Elena's hand stilled. Difficult how? Stubborn. Uncompromising. My grandmother used to say Maggie chose plants over people because they were easier to control. The words felt wrong as soon as Sophia spoke them, especially surrounded by the evidence of Maggie's nurturing care. She chose plants because people kept leaving, Elena said quietly. Your grandmother, her colleagues, when she decided to leave traditional practice, friends who thought she was wasting her talents. But she never stopped hoping that someday someone from her family would understand what she was trying to do here. They moved to another greenhouse after lunch, this one dedicated to medicinal plants. Elena showed Sophia varieties used in traditional healing practices from around the world, explaining Maggie's collaboration with indigenous communities to preserve both the plants and the knowledge of their uses. She always said that losing a plant species was like burning down a library, Elena explained, showing Sophia a climbing vine with heart-shaped leaves. This one produces compounds that might help treat certain cancers, but it only grows in one valley in Ecuador that's being developed for mining. So you're growing it here to preserve it, growing it, studying it, sharing seeds with other conservation programs worldwide. Maggie believed that botanical gardens shouldn't just be pretty displays, they should be arcs. As the afternoon wore on, Sophia found herself drawn deeper into Elena's stories. She learned that Maggie had funded scholarships for students from underrepresented communities, that she'd donated millions to conservation efforts. She'd quietly supported the local food bank with produce from her extensive vegetable gardens. She never talked about the money, Elena said, as they walked through rows of heirloom tomatoes and rare pepper varieties. But she used it thoughtfully. Everything she did had purpose. They ended the day in Maggie's private study, a cozy room. Lined with botanical texts and field journals from around the world, Elena pulled out a thick photo album and sat beside Sophia on the leather sofa. She documented everything, Elena said, opening to the first page. I thought you might want to see. The early photos showed Maggie as Sophia had never imagined, her confident and vibrant, standing beside elaborate garden installations in what appeared to be major cities. There were images of her accepting awards, lecturing to packed auditoriums, collaborating with teams of younger architects and designers. She was famous in her field, Elena explained. It's those public gardens in Portland and Seattle that everyone loves. She designed them. The healing garden at the Children's Hospital in San Francisco, that was her too. As the album progressed, the photos shifted to show Maggie's early years at Willowbrook. She looked older, but no less passionate, her hands dirty from planting, her face bright with discovery as she examined new specimens. Then Elena appeared in the photos young and earnest, clearly in awe of her mentor. The pictures showed their relationship evolving from formal teacher-student to something warmer, more familial. Maggie teaching Elena to graft roses, Elena helping Maggie build raised beds, both of them laughing over some shared joke while potting orchids. She became like a mother to me, Elena said softly. My own parents died when I was in college, and I'd been drifting ever since. Maggie gave me purpose, a home, a future worth working toward. The last photos in the album showed Maggie in her final years, slower, but still engaged, still teaching. In one image, she stood beside Elena in front of the tropical greenhouse, both women beaming with pride at some accomplishment. She was happy here, Sophia said, and it wasn't a question. Very happy, especially these last few years when she knew the work would continue. She used to worry about what would happen to the collection after she was gone, whether it would be sold off or developed. When she decided to leave everything to me, it was like a weight lifted from her shoulders. Sophia closed the album and looked around the study at the carefully organized research notes, the awards and honorary degrees, the evidence of a life fully and purposefully lived. Her great-aunt hadn't been the bitter recluse she'd imagined, but a woman who had chosen meaning over convention, who had built something lasting and important. I owe you an apology, Sophia said finally. Yesterday, when I first arrived, I thought you had somehow manipulated her, convinced her to leave you her fortune instead of her family. Elena was quiet for a long moment. I understand why you might think that. But Sophia... Maggie didn't leave me her fortune despite you being family. She left it to me because she knew I would continue treating it as a trust rather than an inheritance. Outside, the last light of day was fading behind the Douglas firs, and the automatic irrigation systems began their evening cycle. Somewhere in the gardens, night-blooming flowers were beginning to open, adding their fragrance to the cooling air. For the first time since arriving, Sophia felt the tight knot of anger and confusion in her chest beginning to loosen. Pruning old wounds, Sophia found Maggie's private journals on the third morning, tucked away in a locked drawer of the study desk. Elena had given her the key, along with permission to explore anywhere she wished, saying that Maggie had specifically wanted her to have access to everything. The earliest journal dated back to Maggie's move to Oregon 30 years ago, and Sophia settled into the window seat with coffee and morning light, preparing to finally understand what had driven her grattant away from the family. June 15th, the house is smaller than I expected, but full of possibilities. The previous owners let the gardens go wild, but I can see bones of something beautiful underneath the brambles. Mother called again today, asking when I'm coming to my senses and returning to real work. She doesn't understand that this is real work, perhaps the most real I've ever done. Sophia flipped through pages chronicling Maggie's first years at Willowbrook, the challenges of restoration, the joy of discovery, the loneliness of starting over. But it was an entry from several months later that made her stop reading and stare out at the gardens. November. She's furious that I've thrown away everything our parents worked for by leaving the firm, said I'm. Being selfish that I have responsibilities to the family name and reputation. When I tried to explain about the conservation work I want to do here, she laughed. Actually laughed. Said I'm playing in the dirt while I could be designing monuments. She hung up when I told her that saving species might matter more than making money. Helen was Sophia's grandmother. The realization that the family rift had been about Maggie's career choices rather than some mysterious scandal shifted something fundamental in Sophia's understanding. She continued reading, tracking the slow dissolution of family relationships through Maggie's careful documentation. Her grandmother's disapproval, her grandfather's attempts at mediation, the gradual silence as letters went unanswered and phone calls became less frequent. December 20th. No Christmas card from Helen this year. Suppose I shouldn't be surprised. She's made it clear that she considers me a disappointment, an embarrassment to the family. Perhaps she's right. Perhaps choosing passion over profit makes me naive and irresponsible. But when I walk through the greenhouse at dawn and see new growth on plants that were nearly extinct, I can't bring myself to regret the choice. Heavy reading? Sophia looked up to find Elena in the doorway, holding 2 steaming mugs. She accepted. The offered tea gratefully, realizing she'd been reading for over an hour. I'm starting to understand why she never reached out to us, Sophia said. My grandmother really hurt her. Lena settled into the chair across from her. Family wounds often run deepest. Maggie used to say that strangers could only disappoint you, but family could break your heart. Did she ever try to reconnect? Several times over the years, she sent photos of the gardens, articles about her conservation work, invitations for visits. Nothing was ever acknowledged. Elena sipped her tea thoughtfully. She stopped trying. After your grandmother's funeral 5 years ago, she came to the funeral. Sophia was startled. She'd been there herself but had no memory of seeing Maggie. She stood in the back and left before the reception. Said she wanted to pay her respects, but didn't want to cause a scene. Elena's voice was gentle. She asked about you that day. Said you looked so much like Helen did at that age. Driven. And accomplished, but maybe carrying too much weight on your shoulders. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. She'd been 23 at her grandmother's funeral. You're fresh out of business school and desperate to prove herself worthy of the family expectations that had shaped her entire life. The idea that Maggie had been there, had noticed her, had cared enough to ask, was almost overwhelming. She returned to the journals later that afternoon, this time focusing on entries from Elena's arrival 12 years ago. Maggie's writing came. Alive as she described her new assistant's enthusiasm and dedication. September 8th, Elena, reminds me why I loved teaching. She asks brilliant questions and isn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Today she spent 3 hours helping me repot the rare orchids, and her excitement when the phalaenopsis showed new root growth was infectious. It's been so long since I've had someone to share discoveries with. The entries tracked Elena's integration into life at Willowbrook, her growing expertise, the deepening relationship between mentor and student. But they also revealed Maggie's increasing concern about the future of her work. March 22nd. Elena presented her research on native plant restoration to the Botanical Society today. I've never been prouder of anyone. She's become not just my assistant, but my successor, though I haven't found the courage to tell her yet. How do you explain to someone that they've become the child you never had, the heir you never expected? Sophia found Elena in the propagation greenhouse that evening, working late under grow lights. The space felt intimate in the artificial twilight, filled with the quiet sounds of water cycling and plants breathing. She wrote about you constantly, Sophia said, settling onto a stool beside Elena's workbench, especially in the later years. You made her happy. Elena's hand stilled on the seedling she was transplanting. She saved my life. I was so lost when I came here, brilliant on paper, but completely directionless. She gave me purpose, showed me how to channel passion into meaningful work. The inheritance makes sense now, Sophia continued, reading her journals, seeing how much this place meant to her, understanding what you two built together. She wasn't choosing a stranger over family. She was ensuring her life's work would continue with someone who understood its importance. That means a great deal, hearing you say that. Elena looked up with eyes that seemed to hold depth Sophia was only beginning to recognize. She worried about your reaction, about whether you'd understand. I'm not sure I would have. 3 days ago. Sophia gestured around the greenhouse, at the hundreds of small plants that represented thousands of hours of careful work. I've spent my whole adult life focused on profit margins and quarterly reports. This kind of long-term thinking, this investment in things that might not pay off for decades. It's completely foreign to me. Is it though? Elena asked. From what Maggie told me about your work, you're brilliant at seeing potential and struggling companies at finding ways to help them grow and thrive. That's not so different from what we do here. The comparison hadn't occurred to Sophia, but she could see the parallels. Both required patience, careful analysis, the ability to envision possibilities that others might miss. The difference was scale and purpose. She helped companies maximize profits, while Elena and Maggie had worked to preserve irreplaceable pieces of the natural world. Can I ask you something? Sophia said. When you realized the inheritance was coming to you instead of family, did you ever consider refusing it? Elena was quiet for so long that Sophia wondered if she'd offended her. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible above the greenhouse fans. Every day for 6 months after Maggie died, the responsibility felt overwhelming, not just the money, but being trusted with something so important to her. I kept thinking there must be someone more qualified, more deserving. What changed your mind? The plants, Elena said simply. They don't care about my doubts or fears. They need consistent care, ongoing research, continued protection. Someone had to step up, and Maggie had spent 12 years preparing me to be that someone. She stood and moved to check the moisture levels in a section of native wildflowers, her movements automatic and practiced. Sophia watched her work, noting the unconscious competence that came from years of dedicated practice. There's something else, Elena said without turning around. Something Maggie made me promise to tell you when you were ready to hear it. What? Elena returned to her stool, meeting Sophia's eyes directly. She left instructions for me to offer you a partnership if you wanted it. Not in the inheritance that stays mine to ensure the work continues, but in the foundation she established, in the research programs, in the conservation efforts. Thought your business skills combined with what you could learn about botany might create something powerful. Sophia stared at her, speechless. Outside, night-blooming cereus were beginning to open in the desert house, their magnificent flowers lasting only until dawn. The idea that Maggie had seen potential for collaboration had imagined a future where Sophia might contribute to this work was staggering. She really thought I could do this. She thought you could do anything you set your mind to, Elena replied. The question is whether you want to. In the gentle artificial twilight of the greenhouse, surrounded by the quiet sounds of growing things, Sophia felt something fundamental shifting inside her chest. For the first time in years, she was contemplating a future that looked nothing like the one she'd planned. Blooming understanding, the crisis arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of a certified letter and a man in an expensive suit. Sophia was helping Elena harvest vegetables for the local food bank when she noticed the black sedan parked beside the main house, Ms. Vasquez. The man approached with the predatory confidence Sophia recognized from her corporate world. I'm David Marshall, representing Cascade Development. I'd like to discuss a very generous offer for your property. Elena wiped her hands on her jeans, leaving dirt streaks. I'm not interested in selling. You haven't heard our offer yet. It's $25 million cash, closing within 30 days. Sophia felt her breath catch. $25 million would set Elena up for life, would fund conservation work anywhere in the world. But Elena's expression remained unchanged. Still not interested. Marshall's smile tightened. Perhaps you're unaware that the county is considering rezoning this area for commercial development. Your taxes could triple within 2 years. Maintaining a property this size could become ... challenging. After he left, Elena's hands shook as she read the official letter about the rezoning proposal. A public hearing was scheduled for the following week. They can't just take the estate, Sophia said, but even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't that simple. If the county rezoned the land, the tax burden could indeed force a sale. There's something else, Elena said quietly. Maggie was working on documenting a rare orchid species when she died. If we could prove it exists here, the property might qualify for federal protection. They spent the next 3 days searching. Elena led Sophia through every greenhouse, every garden section, every wild corner of the property. They found the orchid on Thursday afternoon, hidden in a shadowy grove near the back boundary, 3 small plants with intricate white and purple flowers unlike anything in Elena's reference books. This is it, Elena breathed, photographing the blooms from every angle. Maggie's field notes mentioned finding something new, but I never imagined ... Sophia knelt beside her, studying the delicate flowers. What do we need to prove it's a new species? Genetic analysis, morphological. Documentation, peer review, months of work, maybe years. We don't have years. The hearing is Monday. That evening, Sophia made calls to every contact she had in San Francisco, leveraging relationships built over her career. By Saturday, she'd arranged for an emergency consultation with Dr. Sarah Kim, one of the country's leading orchid specialists. An expedited genetic testing at a private lab. Dr. Kim arrived Sunday morning, her excitement palpable as she examined the plants. Extraordinary, she murmured, taking detailed measurements. This could indeed be a new species, but formal classification takes time we don't have. What if we could prove significant botanical value without waiting for species confirmation? Sophia asked. Something that would at least delay rezoning until proper studies can be completed. Elena looked up from her notebook. The seed bank. Maggie documented over 300 rare varieties being cultivated here. That might qualify as a research collection worthy of protection. They worked through the night, Elena compiling plant inventories while Sophia prepared a presentation that would have made her corporate colleagues proud. She organized the data into compelling arguments, highlighted the international significance of Maggie's collection, and documented the irreplaceable nature of what would be lost. At the county hearing Monday evening, the room was packed with developers and concerned locals. Elena stood at the podium, her voice steady, despite her nervousness as she presented their case. This estate represents 30 years of dedicated conservation work, she said, her slides showing rare plants that existed nowhere else in cultivation. Destroying it for commercial development would be like burning a library of irreplaceable genetic material. Sophia watched from the audience, her heart pounding as Elena fielded hostile questions from developers and supportive ones from local environmental groups. When a council member asked about the economic impact of preserving the property, Sophia found herself standing. May I address that? Without waiting for permission, she moved to the front. I'm a business consultant from San Francisco. I've spent the last 2 weeks analyzing the financial aspects of this property. I can show you exactly why preservation makes more economic sense than development. She launched into an impromptu presentation about ecotourism, research partnerships, and sustainable revenue streams that could benefit the entire county. The numbers were solid. She'd run them twice, but more importantly, she spoke with a passion that surprised even herself. The council voted to table the rezoning, pending further environmental assessment. It wasn't a permanent victory, but it bought them time. Walking back to the car under the parking lot lights, Alina suddenly stopped and turned to Sophia. Thank you, she said simply, for everything you did today, for staying to help, for ... double quotes. She seemed to struggle for words. Seeing what this place really is, thank you for showing me, Sophia replied. They stood close together in the warm evening air, and Sophia felt something electric pass between them, a recognition that went deeper than gratitude or shared purpose. Sophia, Alina said softly, and the way she spoke her name made Sophia's heart race. I need to tell you something. It's the past 2 weeks, getting to know you, working together like this. I haven't felt this connected to someone in years. Sophia's breath caught. She'd been trying to ignore the growing attraction, the way her pulse quickened when Alina smiled, the comfort she felt in their easy conversations. But seeing Alina's vulnerability, her courage in fighting for what mattered most, had made denial impossible. I feel it too, Sophia whispered. I never expected. When I came here, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted from life. Alina stepped closer, close enough that Sophia could smell her perfume mixed with greenhouse earth. And now I think I want something completely different. Sophia reached up to touch Alina's cheek. I want to stay. I want to help you save this place. I want to see where this leads. When Alina kissed her, soft and tentative under the stars, Sophia felt like one of those night-blooming flowers, finally opening to reveal something beautiful that had been waiting inside all along.